Hampshire, abbreviated Hants, is a southern county of England, bounded north by Berkshire, east by Surrey and Sussex, south by the English Channel, and west by Dorsetshire and Wiltshire. The area is 1,623 square miles. Nearly half of the county consists of high chalk ridges and grass-covered downs which range from 250 to 850 feet above sea level. Winchester is the county town. A vast stretch of forest reaches across the south, the New Forest and the Forest of Beer. A narrow strait, called the Solent, divides the Isle of Wight from the mainland. But the isle itself is part of Hampshire. The principal rivers are the Avon and the Test, the Itchen and the Mearn, which flow into Southampton water. In point of fact, Hampshire has grown around the maritime estuaries of Southampton water and the Christchurch Avon, which, with easy access to the high chalk grounds, encouraged maritime trade and intercourse away back in the early days of English history. Relics have been found in many parts of the country, which can be matched with finds in northwest France and doubtless were objects of early trade. In making a tour of Hampshire, most people enter by the northeast corner from the London Basin. Here we find the home of the British Army in Aldershot, other than which Aldershot has no history. Much of the surrounding country is heathland and devoted to army maneuvers and training. Thus, scenically, it has been spoiled. But otherwise it doesn't matter, for it's poor agricultural land. To the west, we find Basingstoke, a manufacturing town and one which is also an important road and rail centre. Around here is some lovely countryside, undulating, good farmland. Through this rolling country, we make our way to Winchester by what was an old Roman road. Winchester is literally in the very centre of the county and may really be termed the very gem of the British Empire, once the stronghold of the Celts, the Romans and the Saxons. Here is a city whose princes, victorious over the Danes, became the kings of England. All the peoples that have contributed to the history and development of southern Britain have met and learned to work together in the ancient centre of Winchester. Today, it is a city which remains virtually unspoiled. The main thoroughfare is dominated by the giant statue of King Alfred, whose capital Winchester was 1,000 years and more ago. In the castle is the traditional seat of King Arthur, and here the Round Table has hung upon the wall for over 500 years. East of Winchester, as far as the Sussex border, lies a stretch of country which is exclusively rural. Wide open farmlands, rich soil and productive crops. Here is one of the greatest honey-producing areas in southern Britain. This is an industry worthy of study, for the Hampshire honey producer has adopted modern methods. No longer does he employ the old straw beehive. The modern hive is scientifically designed. I visited one of these farmers and saw him dismantling his hive, which was comparatively easy as the bees had been stupefied with an up-to-date smoke gun. The interior of the hive consists of a series of vertical trays which contain the wax combs. Each hive contains some dozen of these trays. The bees obtain entrance to the hive by a sloping board at its base. After the hive has been made up and the trays put in place, it is carefully covered over and closed down. The only entrance and exit is by the sloping board. Hampshire honey is very sweet, and in the main, the bees draw from flowers and clover. My visit was fortunate, for on this particular day, the farmer had found a swarm in a nearby tree of his orchard. To the uninitiated, the trapping of this swarm and getting it back into the hive might well appear to be a problem. But as I watched, I realized how extremely simple the whole thing was. The farmer merely waited his opportunity and quietly took away the whole swarm in a small open box. Then he gently emptied the bees out onto a cloth laid on the ground beside the hive and pulled it over towards the entrance. The bees very soon started to crawl into the hive. I wondered why, but the answer was simple when it was explained to me that the hive contained a queen bee. Looking round the garden of the farmhouse, I had ample opportunity of studying the bees at work as they hovered around the various blooms. The farmer showed me a hive in which he expected the honey to be ready for removal. He quietly opened up, used his smoke gun, and then removed a tray. But the wax tray was by no means filled. Then he tried another, where we hoped for better things. He gently removed the trays, the wax combs of which were completely filled with honey. The final process is the extraction, and this is done in a machine in which the trays are fitted and then rotated at a high speed. The centrifugal force of the operation extracts the honey. I went down the eastern border of the county through the forest of Waterlooville. The road emerges on the top of the downland hills which look over Portsmouth. Portsmouth may mean the birthplace of Dickens, or the Royal Naval Dockyard, or HMS Victory, or half a hundred other things that the Englishman should know all about. There is little to suggest that this naval station was built up slowly by one sovereign after another through toilsome centuries of development. Portsmouth is now a modern place. On the high ground above the town stand some of the old fortresses. A few of them are still in use, and towering above is the great, slender Nelson Monument. The Isle of Wight, with its famous Needles, lies green and tranquil across the narrow water. This is the island which inspired the pen of Tennyson. The Romans found it pleasant enough to keep them there for over 400 years. Here there is little of industry, apart from agriculture, except yacht building. Cowes is the Mecca of yachtsmen and the headquarters of the Royal Yacht Squadron. Most places round the coast are devised for holiday makers. Past the island and up the Solent sail the world's greatest liners and the humblest tramp steamers, bound for the great docks of Southampton. Southampton is not a beautiful city. It has no inspiring buildings, but by its harbour and docks, it is a place of many tremendous memories and romantic attachments to the sea. It is a place of great comings and goings, of great business, great ships, and great events. Beyond the docks, the green forest is the same, the New Forest, which stretches for miles north and west of Southampton. For many generations, this part of Hampshire has been forest land. Though the forest is not so great as it was, it still covers a vast tract. It was here that King William Rufus was killed by a hunter's arrow. An inscribed stone marks the spot. Throughout the forest are herds of wild ponies. Wild donkeys too are found. And each year, the ponies and the donkeys are rounded up and branded with the owner's mark. In the depth of the forest, one can often see the great New Forest pigs which dig and root about after acorns. It was the oak timber from these forests which provided the materials for our early ships, dating right back to the days of King Alfred. Beaulieu, without a doubt, is the most beautiful of all the New Forest places, situated on the river which bears its name. Nearby, there is a little place called Buckler's Hard, and here were built the stout oak ships which helped to found the British Empire, the Agamemnon, the Swiftsure, and the Eurobus, whose guns thundered at Trafalgar. One can still see the timbers of the old slipways, rotting and covered with weeds. A pleasant conclusion to a tour of Hampshire is a visit to Bournemouth. England has certainly no finer seaside place, and by the climate it enjoys and the amenities which have been provided, it is an all-round resort. A queen of watering places in this lovely English county.